Welcome to Ancient Geeks, a podcast from a couple of geeks of a certain age who are looking back on geek culture from its infancy from the perspective of today. We were geeks before it was cool, but I do think it's going to be a long, long time before Touchdown brings us round again. I am your co-host, or your coast, Stephen Taylor.
Hi, and I'm your co-host, Tom Grant.
So today on Ancient Geeks, we return to the 70s to look at the collision of variety TV and geeky genre stuff. How are you today, Tom?
Oh, I've sufficiently recovered from the last 70s superhero episode that I can do this because if we'd done it last week, I don't know if I could have gone on
It
after.
is an interesting mainlining of pop culture from our youth that is, shall we say, a challenge in some
Yeah.
ways.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Same kind of deal. Brain is full of all kinds of ridiculousness, which we'll talk about here in great detail. But before we get to that, what geek thing have you been doing this week?
In preparation for an upcoming episode, I've been rereading some of the 1970s X-Men comics when Marvel restarted the X-Men. They'd been in hiatus for a while, and so that was the yeah, Chris Claremont, Dave Cockrum, John Byrne era, and it's a lot of fun. Those are great issues.
Yeah, it's on my obviously my list of things to do, and I'm looking forward to it. I was thinking about it just this morning. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten to it yet. I haven't really done. I think really the only geek stuff I've done this week is prep for this episode. And maybe the only extra thing that I did that you didn't do is I've been reading Bruce Valanche's book. It seemed like a bad idea at the time. I think I've got the title right, and it's entertaining, although I'm not sure that's worthy of recommendation.
Right. And I
Um,
just want to throw in that we're so dedicated to our craft that
yes.
I just finished an incredibly busy period teaching. And I was doing a film class, and my reward, you can hear the air quotes, was to watch some really terrible television that we'll talk about.
Yes. Um, so what theme music would you have if we could afford to have theme music?
Chewbacca Baka from the Donnie and Marie Star Wars skit.
Yeah, that was I was gonna go Darth Vader's Raiders, which
Yeah,
is the
that's good.
one that from
Yeah,
that same thing, or obviously the Life Day song.
you're right.
But I don't remember the lyrics.
Well, especially
Although
since Chewbacca Baka is a callback to the Wacka to Wacka music we were talking about
yes, it's
in
an
the
excellent,
70s superhero show episode.
an absolutely excellent choice. I also in the back of my mind a totally different song is Annie Lennox's "Why." Just why? I was going to do a I was going to attempt to do a Shatner-esque dramatic reading of some of the lyrics, but I will point out
Okay.
two lyrics from the song. It's a song I quite like actually, but one is "I'm sorry for the things I've done." I'm not sure that refers to us watching this stuff or those people making this stuff.
Right.
And this kind of trouble's only just begun. And with
There we
that,
go.
let's talk about some variety shows. I want to talk a minute right about the concept, right?
Yeah, and why we're
Um,
doing this.
yeah. So let me talk a little bit of background because I really one of the things that I've found interesting about this project we have engaged in, especially as we look back at some of this stuff from our childhood and ask the question, yeah, literally why? Why did this stuff? Why was this made? What does it mean? What was the environment for entertainment in our youth, right? So
Yeah.
like the 1970s was full of variety shows, and a variety show is really a format that we're all familiar with, although they don't really exist the way they used to. There was a specific celebrity host. There was a series of unconnected acts, magicians and comedians and musicians, dancers, people spinning plates and sometimes doing sketches. I think it's pretty clear that its origins were in vaudeville from the late 19th century. So this is really a long-standing uh, tradition that existed for a very long time in American entertainment. I guess there's some linkages to somewhere activities in the UK that I did not look into, but I think it's interesting that we'll talk about here in a minute the degree to which so many of the actors at the time all seem to want to do song and dance routines and record albums or all this kind of stuff that doesn't seem to be the case any longer.
Or their
Uh,
agents wanted them to do it.
well, fair enough.
Yeah.
Although I think there's a little bit of both, right?
Hmm.
So, I mean, for example, I was thinking about so there's also, and I did notice this in the Bruce Valanche book, and I think this is where I saw the term, but I couldn't find it again when I looked this morning. He talked about what he called a sitcom variety show, where it's like a sitcom around a variety show. So like a
Yeah.
1970s example is the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, one of the heights of American culture. But I mean, I was stopped to think about like the Jack Benny show is this, which is goes ways back in
Yeah.
the 30s.
Right. I was
There's an
thinking about
L,
Jack Benny too when you
yeah,
said that.
there's an element of it in I Love Lucy, although it's not
Hmm.
really about the. Sometimes it was, or even the Dick Van Dyke Show with the Alan Brady Show embedded in it, and all of those shows. Especially, I really didn't watch Jack Benny, but I watched a lot of Dick Van Dyke, and I watched a decent amount of I Love Lucy back in the day. And one of the conceits of those shows, kind of to my point, is that the main characters always are either willing or want to do their own variety acts. They want to do a song and dance routine. There was a lot of it with Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore, and Lucy was constantly wanting to be on
Hmm.
whatever that thing was that Ricky had. Of course, it just bleeds over into Ricky by Weird Al Yankovic, and so I'm maybe
Okay.
merging some of the plots, but so there were a lot of these shows, right? And even in the 70s, and I was trying to think as I looked at lists and thought about my own experience. These were on in my house quite frequently. The Flip Wilson Show, the Sonny and Cher Show, Tony Orlando and Dawn, the aforementioned Brady Bunch Show, Captain and Tennille, Donnie and Marie, Shields and Your Nail, because who wouldn't want a show hosted by mimes? Um, it's almost like that's a fever dream. This existed.
That was like done on a dare, right?
It's just like
Somebody said,
um,
"You can't make a show with mimes. I'll
that's
show
right. I'll
you."
show you. And I do remember. I guess the last big successful, still quote unquote successful variety show was Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell Sisters in the early 1980s.
My
And
God, you watched a lot of this.
my parents had it all. I blame my parents. It's just maybe perhaps
Okay.
child abuse. I don't recall. The only one I would blame myself for the Brady Bunch because we liked my sister and I used to watch the Brady Bunch rerun, so I'm sure that was part of the
Yeah.
appeal. And Donnie Marie, I know we really truly watched on like a weekly basis. Um, the rest of it, who knows? But
Well, and so we should be fair.
yeah.
There is at least one good show in the history of Hollywood, which is the Smothers Brothers, which
Okay,
was
yeah,
a variety show.
yes, it
Yeah,
was.
it wasn't all garbage, but in the
Which
70s, it really was garbage.
yeah, that's the 60s and they get canceled for political reasons. Google it, kids. I I would say that maybe the two shows that do fit that are not really variety shows, but they're kind of roughly in the genre that I think were actually good. One was the Carol Burnett show, but that's really a sketch comedy show,
Right.
not really a variety show. And the other is the Muppet Show, which is um, really a sketch comedy show too. And it also kind of fits that situation comedy and variety show thing because it's really about them putting the show on.
Right.
But we'll talk about the Muppet Show a little bit later. And I will say that at least we can thank the Mary Tyler Moore Show variety attempt, which I think also was a sitvar at one point, for bringing us David Letterman, who I quite like. But anyway, what was your youthful experience before we talk about the whys of all this?
Yeah, I mean, probably less. We certainly watched the Sonny and Cher show. I don't know why we didn't branch out to the other ones. If I had known about it at the time, I probably
Better
would have.
taste?
Better taste. We watched. It wasn't exactly a variety show; it was a skit comedy show. Though they did like a couple of the early episodes have like the Strawberry Alarm Clock on them, which is an old pop group, and that was Laugh-In. I mean, we were big
Oh yeah,
Laugh-In
laughing.
devotees.
Yes.
But if something came around that was tied somehow to the things that I loved, the things we're talking about here in the podcast, I would have watched it, which is kind of surprising that I didn't see a lot of the shows that we're going to be talking about until later in life.
Yeah, that's right. So, um, you gave me homework for monster movies a couple of
Yeah.
episodes ago, and I had to give you homework for this. So, apologies, but nonetheless.
No, not at all. That's the nature of the podcast.
So, why why
Why are
talk
we
about these
why are
things?
we doing
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Well, so here my list was first of all, it was part of our childhood and
Yes,
it our early geek lives, and it also kind of illustrates just how poorly, in some ways, geek culture meshed with mainstream popular culture at the time.
yes,
I mean, we talked about how big the Batman TV show was,
Yes.
how big the Superman movie was, but really a lot of the efforts to try to bring geekery into the mainstream were unsuccessful. And we'll talk about it, I think, when we talk about the nature of these variety shows, why it didn't mesh in this particular case.
Right, because I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to make clear, right? So we're not going to talk about, if anyone's not already tuned us out, we're not going to talk about Shields and Yarnell or the Mandrell sisters. But what we are talking about here is there was an awful lot of the genre stuff, right? A lot of Star Wars in particular, but other things as well that popped up on these shows. Um, and you're right, there's this weird attempt to connect a certain segment of the population through this sort of mass entertainment outlet that ended up
Right.
creating some quite bizarre results.
Yes. But we might have lost people who were hoping for Barbara Mandrell
That's
when you
true.
when you
I'm
said that.
sorry.
The
All
Mandalorians.
Mandalorians. I was going to say Mandrell heads, but Mandalorians is much better. Much, much better.
So that's
Holy
one
cow.
reason. I think the other big reason, that we're talking about this is also that I, Hollywood doesn't necessarily understand its audience or even
Right.
clearly have an audience in mind. And TV now is way better. And
Yes.
that certainly is something that will come out of the discussion organically here. We don't have a Hollywood landscape that is dominated by this kind of programming. And part of it at the time, but even at the time, like how many people really wanted to see the Star Wars Christmas special? You know, I yeah, maybe a lot of people wanted to see that, but certainly like Legend of the Superheroes, the DC Comics one that we were talking about, what was the audience for that? And Hollywood, still does that. I mean, there's a lot of that Hollywood puts out that isn't necessarily, in complete lockstep with public tastes. And I think that's also one thing we wanted to highlight
Right.
here.
I think in some cases it's a mismatch between what the execs think the audience wants to see and what the audience does want to see. So I think, I mean, I wanted to see, and I did watch. We'll talk about the Star Wars Holiday Special when it came
Right.
out. I was 10 or 11, however old it was. That was exciting because it was Star Wars on TV. I think
Right.
there was an audience for Star Wars on TV. Now, whether there was an audience for what Star Wars they gave us is a whole different
Well,
discussion.
that's what
Yeah,
I meant. Yeah, there certainly
yeah.
was an audience for Star Wars, but watching something and walking away from it with a sense of betrayal,
Oh,
just
yes.
well, that wasn't what Star Wars was about. You know.
Right. No,
Anyway,
agreed.
that's yeah,
Agreed.
yeah,
And yeah, I think there's a clear intersection um, to again the linkage to our experience with superhero TV from the 70s that we discussed a couple episodes back, and really trying to sort of work our way through a retrospective understanding of what mass entertainment looked like and how it's
yeah.
evolved.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, just again, and like to go back to the 70s superhero shows, as a reminder for people who listen to that episode, we likened that to TV cop shows. That
yes,
what Hollywood did at this time, what the TV studios did was to take something and try to jam it into whatever the mold was that they
right.
preferred to fit all programming into, whether it was a TV
That's
cop
right.
show or a variety show, whether it fit or not.
Yeah, and I think the variety show thing is also about, well, it is about mass appeal and this sort of long tradition of vaudevillian kind of entertainment, but also I think it's relatively inexpensive, right? I was
Yes.
thinking about in some ways that what that the reality TV quote unquote
Hmm.
of the moment is kind of what this was back then, right? It was relatively straightforward, not expensive. You didn't have to have complex sets. It
Yeah.
just was a thing you could do and fill time, and people would clearly watch it. Um,
Just like the 70s superhero shows. I
yeah,
mean,
yes,
everything was done as cheaply and easily as possible.
yes, yes. No, there was recently this article that you and I sent you and I talked about on the blog that I write out briefly outside the Beltway about the Atlantic had a piece about, is culture dying? I can't remember the exact quotation, but and because my joke to you was, I've got some 70s TV to show them if they think the culture is dying now. But yeah, it is.
Yes.
There's always the capacity to critique what we currently have, right? And you and I would critique some of the ways in which there's been oversaturation of Marvel superhero movies, right? I'm not super excited about Thunderbolts or the New Avengers, whatever they're calling it now. I
Hmm.
mean, maybe I watch it at some point, maybe I don't, but I'm not like clamoring to go see any of this stuff. And but I also can't argue that the quality of any of the worst Marvel movie, I'd rather watch that than more episodes of, the Spider-Man TV show from the 70s.
Right.
And that in general, while there's plenty to critique about mass media, again, reality TV doesn't appeal to me, but it's also the case that, you can watch pretty amazing stuff right now, that appeals to various audiences, and it's a more niche approach, and therefore you get better. But it's interesting that you spend more for a targeted experience than was spent for the mass audience, at least so it would seem in the 70s, on
Yeah.
balance.
And also too, just to slam the genre a little bit more before we get into these specific
Slam, slam.
examples, it kept underlining every watch of these TV shows, just how unseriously everybody took the subject matter, right? And
Yes. Oh yeah.
and it is
Yeah.
the nature of just being a variety show, but it just, if you really like Star Wars, or you really like Star Trek, or you really like comic books or whatever,
Right.
just to have this, these, something that again doesn't capture what you like about those things at all.
Right.
And just everybody has this sort of snarky attitude towards it, who's doing it. They genuinely
Right.
do not, kind of very a lot of condescension in these shows. And
Yes.
and also too, like a convention of the time was the laugh track.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's something that's really hard to understand for people who don't go back and watch these shows if they didn't grow up with them. So we were kids or in our teens at the time. Was just so much of programming like this had the laugh track, and it was always underlying the unreality and of what you were seeing, and kind of promoted disengagement from it. So the laugh track was always the same set of laughs.
Yes.
Like, and whatever show you watched, whether it was Gilligan's Island or Sonny and Cher show and so forth, you heard the same people making the same laughs over and over and over again. And it just kind of kept you at arm's length. It's like, this is all so manufactured and cheap. Why am I even, kind of engaged with this at all? As I said, disengagement was sort of the way that I felt, when I watched something with the laugh track, including a lot of the shows we're going to talk about here.
Right. I always thought, even in my youth, that the laugh track was insulting. It's like, you're supposed to
Yes,
laugh at this.
right.
This is funny. Make sure you're laughing at it right now.
Yeah, and if you're
Um,
already feeling like you're treated like as an idiot,
yes.
for liking Star Wars or DC Comics, then that just, kind of adds the proverbial icing on the proverbial cake.
So I mean, I always envisioned, and I assume it's the case. I don't know, but there's an actual, to make another geek reference. So there's an episode of the original series of Star Trek, Bread and Circus, where they go to a planet that's like, Earth in the 20th century, except the Romans have stayed in power. And part of it's around a TV show, right? The Gladiator show is a show. And they show the guy turning a knob for like applause or boos.
Oh,
And,
good call.
and that's what it feels like. I'm assuming it's really kind of what had to be how it worked, right? Somebody was operating a lever or some kind of mechanism to, like, oh, we're gonna clap, we're gonna laugh, it's like, this is artifice, and it's sort
Yeah,
of a gross type.
yeah.
Um, I don't know the transition. When the transition took place, it's certainly in the last couple of decades, when sitcoms stopped doing that, is
Mhm.
appreciated. I don't like a laugh track. I never have.
Yeah, or even you don't necessarily even need an audience.
No, no, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Film before a live studio audience with the applause sign. Anyway,
Yes.
enough of that.
Enough of that.
Um, so okay. So we have a list of things we're going to talk about. And we've already made some references. We'll talk about some more than others, but there was the Paul Lynde Halloween special. There are the two episodes of the Legions of the Superheroes specials, which I really put that in quotes. Um, a number of short examples of various, Shatner singing or Nimoy singing or appearing on something, and then a bunch of different Star Wars examples. The holiday
Yeah.
special being the most prominent, but there's the whole Donnie and Marie thing. There was an episode with the Muppets, and then because you made the mistake of pointing out to me, I did watch the Bob Hope thing, and
Oh, I'm sorry.
then I found the Richard Pryor thing, which was I'd never heard of.
Yeah, I did
Um,
watch that. I had, and I remembered when you sent me that. I had seen that at the time.
I didn't even know he had a show, but
Yeah.
apparently that show only lasted 4 episodes. That's why I didn't know that he had a show. Anyway, so we'll kind of now. So of that stuff, to your point though, I mean, I saw at the time, I saw the Donnie Marie thing. We'll talk about it in detail later. I saw the Star Wars Holiday Special, and then it felt like a fever dream for many, many years after.
That
Um,
happened.
yeah, I saw the Muppet thing. That's stuck in my head for a very, very long time. I those I saw on TV when they happened,
Yeah.
and the rest of it's I've seen, on the internet over time. How about you? So you saw the Richard Pryor thing at the time?
I saw the Richard Pryor because I was a fan of the show. I also saw I the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced that I saw Mark Hamill on the Muppet
Okay,
Show because we did watch the Muppet Show at the time. We weren't diehard fans, but we did watch it every once in a while, and I'm pretty sure I saw that before. Elements of it seemed familiar
sure.
to me, but the rest of it I didn't see.
So yeah. So as you can tell from my previous list, and not that I watched every episode of those shows, but there was a lot of scarring entertainment on my television
Yes.
that's warped my brain and brought us to this point. But
Do you
so let's
dream
let's
in
talk though.
in in the medium of variety shows?
That's right. That's right. Oh, Satan shows up and has acts to show me when I've been a bad boy. I don't know.
Here are the Hudson brothers,
At
who
any rate,
genuinely needed a laugh track on the Sonny and Cher show.
oh goodness. So uh, the Paul Lynde Halloween special. We'll start with that one, which is the most variety show and the least genre of all
Mhm.
of them. Although it does have within the structure of the show his uh, the Wicked Witch of the West and Witchy Pooch are characters, the originals
Right.
from the Wizard of Oz and from all those H.R. Puff and stuff, Sid and Marty Krofft shows, um, and uh, and Paul Lynde, of course, is a staple of these shows. He's
Yes.
all over the place. He'll show up later in another part of the conversation, but he somehow carved a career out of either appearing on variety shows or Hollywood Squares.
Right. And he was for those who don't know him, a character. He
Yes.
was a funny guy. Um, how else do you describe him?
So Paul Lynde was, yeah, he was highly snarky. He played a version of himself.
Right.
He had the way he spoke, the kinds of jokes that he dished out. His entire demeanor was sort of snark. He
Yeah.
was also a closeted gay man who kind of gave hints, but back in the 70s, you could only make like weird jokes about it. You couldn't be
Right.
straightforward about it. He had uh, which I guess he started out in musical theater, had a part in Bye Bye
Mhm.
Birdie. That was his big break, but he never was
Yeah.
a leading man. He was never a successful actor beyond certain punctuated moments. Some people may know him as Uncle Arthur on the Bewitched program. That's
Right.
probably the area that I first encountered him. But then, yeah, he was very prominent on Hollywood Square as a game
Well,
show
he
that
had
was,
the place of honor in the central square.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So he was a kind of a big deal. And
he
I don't
was.
know if there's like a modern equivalent to Paul Lynde.
It's hard, but
I'm
that's a good,
drawing a blank. Maybe it'll come to me as we're
it's, I,
talking, but
maybe, but I mean, it's a good point, we can even make a broader point about the kinds of people that seem to show up on these things over and over again. There was just like this stable of persons. Maybe they were actors, maybe they were just generic performers. Rip Taylor comes to mind.
oh
These are
yeah.
sort of these are like they were quote unquote characters, and they kind of played versions of themselves. They maybe would show up on a sitcom for one episode. They were on game shows. Um, they were on these variety shows, and it's interesting sort of recycling of people who had this sort of very specific demeanor or part they played.
Yeah, and the shows we talk about often are really more vehicles for Paul Lynde or other people we'll
Yes,
talk about than they are for Star Wars or DC
that's right.
Comics or whatever. I like actually doing something with the property that's in the title of the show was a tertiary
That's
concern for
right.
the people who are making it. They much more wanted to showcase Harvey Korman or Paul Lynde or
That's
somebody
right.
like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the Paul Lynde Halloween special, it's all about this idea that he goes to this haunted castle and he gets three wishes, and they do a series of skits around these wishes. Um, but it does contain a lot of these people like I am talking about, like Billy Barty, who was
Hmm.
a little person who was in a lot of that Sid Marty Krofft stuff. He
Yeah.
pops up. Betty White's in it. The Osmonds are in it, or Donnie and Marie at least. Um, it is this sort of weird, incestuous cauldron of like B-level talent. I don't, that's not
And
nice, but
all
it's
these disconnected skits,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
like
right.
the trucker song by
Yes.
Paul Lynde. Like, where the hell did that come from? Then it's a very spangly trucker outfit.
Yes, yes, sort of a rhinestone trucker, which includes a callback or a connection at that point in time to Happy Days, which was a popular sitcom
Hmm.
because it had Pinky Tuscadero, which is a recurring character. As it's just all this weird interconnectivity. It's all there's a lot of self-reference in all this stuff, um, without it really having any coherence.
Yeah, right. I mean, the casting people said, "Whom can we get?"
That's
And
right. That's right.
that would really like get eyeballs on the screen for this show.
And of course, this is also the network television premiere of Kiss, the rock band quartet, the painted faces and
Yeah,
whatnot. It was crazy.
there was a lot more of them than I expected in that episode. They did how
Yeah,
many? Three songs, four
three
songs?
songs, at least three
Yeah,
songs.
yeah.
Like instead of just doing one number, which what you would normally expect.
Yeah, and it wasn't
And
just all, kind of hard rock power chord sort of music. It was also the soulful ballad.
yes,
Uh,
Beth,
yes.
for all you Kiss heads in the audience.
So
Yeah,
it
it
is really
was.
hallucinatory, right? Because you go
It
from
really,
one
really
thing
is.
to another. It is like you're going through a bad dream,
Well, yeah, because you do start off with his housekeeper actually being Margaret Hamilton from The Wizard of Oz, but then
right?
it's Witchy Poo, and it's just all this sort of like, because again, if you're not familiar, right, the Witchy Poo comes from this H.R. Puffin stuff, Sid Marty Krofft, really truly psychedelic,
Yeah.
puppet-esque live action kid shows
Mhm.
that really I think require acid to fully understand, and I don't, so I've never done
That's not
acid, I can't say that I understand them, so.
well, yes, of course you do. You watch these shows or the banana splits.
That splits. It was, I mean, it really, I guess part of what I'm really reckoning with in all these conversations is how truly strange a lot of this entertainment that I consumed as a child was.
Yeah.
It's just off the walls bonkers. Um,
Well, yeah, and
anyway,
that was like especially like starting in the 60s, like there were all the
mhm.
weird sitcoms. Oh, well, here's an Air Force officer who happens to have a genie who lives in his house and
That's right.
just these wacky things that people came up with.
It's true. It's true. So I mean, I guess what I would we can whatever else you would like to add. I won't belabor Paul Lynn's Halloween special any further, except to say it does live on YouTube. I will eventually post to our various medias. I got a list of things I'm going to post. So
Yeah,
hopefully by the time you hear this, it's there, or you can just search for it. But it is I think, a quintessential example of a '70s variety special.
it is.
It is this weird one-off. It has a strange narrative to it. It's built around celebrities, and then people that you would have known at the time, like Betty White, like Billy Barty, they just show up and do their shtick, whatever their shtick happens to be at the time.
Right.
Um, and then, you move on to whatever's on next.
And it was also unsatisfying. I mean, it was just,
Oh,
if
yes.
if as a kid you wanted to watch that because it was a Halloween special, there was
Yes.
actually very little Halloween in it.
That's true. That's true. No, it had some of a patina of Halloween,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
most of it was just I guess
No
part of what I love these
vampires,
shows.
no ghosts,
No,
no,
no.
just the
There's
witches.
some. Just the witches. The A lot of these shows feel like you put a bunch of writers in a room and they were told you've got to fill an hour, fill it up, and whatever you can come up with, cool.
Right. So this is the 1970s version of a chatbot.
That's there we go.
Write me a story with Paul Lynde and Kiss and Margaret Hamilton.
That's right.
It's going to
There you
fill an
go.
hour.
Have at. All right. Anything else about the Halloween special you want to
Oh,
discuss?
hell no. No, no.
So let's talk about something that actually made me want to go back and watch the Paul and Halloween special because it was more entertaining.
Yeah.
The Legends of the Superheroes, which is a two-episode um, set of specials that aired in January of 1979.
Right.
Um, so,
Dear
what do you
God.
want to? Yeah, they are. So there's the two episodes. One, and we're both fools because we both bought the DVDs for this.
Well, it's the only way
So
to
if
see
any,
it.
I know. Well,
In a way,
that's your
that's a
toll.
good thing, right? You
That's right.
know,
But we're encouraging more sales possibly, or maybe that's their inventory. But just to tell the listeners our dedication to truly experiencing what we want to talk about, we did not only watch these things, we bought them. Um, Holy cow! So it's a it's a two episode kind of related but not related. There's one called The Challenge where the Legion of Doom. So in both episodes, it has a bunch of superheroes and a bunch of supervillains. They're all from DC, in really terrible costumes, um, and of course, utterly. I was going to say bad special effects, but calling what you see in that episode special effects is not
no.
even that doesn't even whatever you want to call them. But so and so the first episode is the Legion of Supervillains or Legion. I don't know they call them Legion of Doom, but it doesn't. You get the idea. They've have for some reason have created a device to destroy the world in an
Hmm.
hour, and sort of challenge the superheroes to stop them. So it's a series of I won't even call them wacky because wacky sounds positive. I wouldn't call them entertaining or interesting, but a number of encounters between various superheroes and supervillains before they eventually solve the crime. And the
Right.
second one is a celebrity roast format, but still not really a roast, where the supervillains show up and roast the superheroes, and there's some kind of sketches in there. What else would you add to that description? Because there's a lot more that can be said.
Yeah, I think that this is where you do ask, why did this get made? And the best answer I can come up with, which kind of answers the structure of these two shows,
Yes.
it was to give comedians who were notable at the time a gig.
Yeah. Hmm.
And the DC Comics fig leaf of an excuse was pretty small because it really is just, give Frank Gorshin and Charlie Callis and other people a chance to do shtick. And once in that challenge format and once in the roast format.
I may be even less charitable than that. It was an excuse for them to get a paying gig. I'm not even sure
Yeah.
they were doing much shtick. Um,
Yeah.
I,
Well, so we should say, okay, so
yeah.
the superheroes who are in it,
Yes.
and this again goes to the disappointment, right? Like I'm very
Right.
glad I didn't see this when I was young.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh, Batman and Robin, played by Adam West and Burt Ward, the originals,
Yes. Which
and
if I had known about it at the time, I would have been excited to see it.
absolutely,
Right.
yeah, absolutely, and even like Batman's cowl was wrong.
Oh
It
yeah, he
just
forgot how to
looked
wear
bad.
it.
Yeah, it just looked bad. Green Lantern, The Flash, Hawkman, Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, The Huntress, an interesting choice.
Hmm.
Was a minor character then. Black
And a relatively new
Canary,
character.
right, a relatively new character, and the Atom. And so you'd
Yeah.
see that lineup and you'd think, wow, they're doing the Justice League. That's
Right.
fantastic.
Right.
And then the villains included the Riddler, Mordru, an evil sorcerer, Sinestro, Green Lantern's foe, the Green Lantern turned bad, turned yellow, uh, Solomon Grundy, Dr. Sivana, the Weathered Wizard, and Giganta. So it
Yes.
really was a lot like, and where in the comics you'd see the Justice League pair off against a team of the individual heroes'
Yes.
nemesis. So whether it was the Justice League or the Justice Society or whatever, and you think, wow, that's a terrific opportunity for some great comic book television.
You would be quite wrong about that.
You'd be quite wrong.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And then I put a list together of the comedians. So you had Frank Gorshin, Charlie Callis, really strange choice a, for a show like this. Pat Carroll, Jeff Altman, Howard Morris, Ruth Buzzy, Brad Sanders, and the host of the roast was Ed McMahon, Johnny Carson's sidekick. Now, most
yeah.
of those names are lost to time. Ruth Buzzy just passed away. She was
Yes,
famous
she did.
for being on Laugh-In. Frank Gorshin, he was a regular on the Tonight Show and other places doing impressions, so maybe people know that. But it was again just kind of them doing shtick in these individual scenes at a gas station, at a used car lot, somewhere in the woods where there happens to be a psychiatrist's office.
Yes.
Once again,
Yes.
hallucinatory.
Oh, very hallucinatory. No, yeah, so the first one, the challenge, which is the only one, Frank Gorshin somehow managed to get out of the roast. So more power to him, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah,
Or they couldn't afford to pay him. He was probably the the most famous of the villains, I would think,
yeah.
maybe.
Because I think
Maybe,
because he was a regular in talk shows
yeah.
and other venues, because he could do impressions, and I think maybe he was the most expensive person there, other than
And,
maybe Adam West.
well, yeah, but he also represented sort of this reunion of the original Batman TV show, right? Because he was on
Right.
the Riddler on there. Although I did have to say that based on the way that he sat on stage, I felt like his new name should have been the Man Spreader because he was like just like what the heck, man. Um,
Well, he was always very physical in
yes,
that way,
he
but he
was.
wasn't. But never in the Batman TV show did you ever see him sitting for that long.
No, no, that's
And I'm
true.
not. I'm not defending the mansplaining. I'm just saying
No.
it kind of fits, but it was a little
Yeah,
obnoxious.
they were all in chairs. Yeah, yeah. It was, although you did forget the Retired Man in your lineup of superheroes.
Oh, why did I forget
And
Retired Man? I must be getting.
and we'll talk about Ghetto Man here in a minute, I expect. But yeah, it was but yeah, the actions so that they were the internal sequences which is just on a stage,
Yeah,
which them sitting in like semicircle in front of like they were on a stage play or something. And um then all the action boy that we're doing a lot of work sequences were out of doors at clearly like lame backlot locations wherever they
yeah.
filmed this thing, where they were clearly combating like ambient noises and and whatnot. Um, so I liked. So there was this one the bit where Batman and Robin fight Solomon Grundy. The conceit was that when Solomon Grundy had his hat on, you couldn't tell he was Solomon Grundy.
It's a
And
magic
I
hat,
really, for a split second, thought they would at least do a very simple visual effect that when he had the hat on, he wouldn't have the makeup on. Oh
right?
no, you just had to like know that when he had the hat on, you couldn't recognize who he was, and he took the hat off. Oh, it's Solomon Grundy. It was, I mean, it wasn't even like a little tiny bit of attempt at a visual effect. It was just insanity. Um, so yeah, it was just really, really anemic, and it
Yeah,
wasn't funny, and it did have a lot of the laugh track. The jokes were incredibly lame.
yeah. I didn't laugh
Um,
once.
no, and I kept, and each one is like, I mean, because it was an hour long show, but it was, so there's space for commercials, about 45 minutes. I kept pausing in, like, how much more of this is there before I
I
can
know.
move on?
I
It
have the
was
same
interminable.
feeling.
It was just not good.
And
Um,
it's so lazy in the writing and
yeah,
production that it actually made me angry at those moments that there was so much left. So yeah, we've kind of alluded to some of the shticks already, but I'll just kind of underline
Yes,
if
please.
yeah. So for comedy writers at the time, if they really deserved that title in this particular case, there were certain set pieces that people assumed would be funny. Like if you had a used car salesman, that was going to be
Hmm.
funny. Or if you had a psychiatrist, a very Teutonic psychiatrist who yelled
Yes.
at his patients, that was going to be funny. Or the really offensive, continuing quote unquote joke about, well, ladies, I meant to say people.
Oh,
That
I
that
know.
that
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
Adam West kept doing, that was supposed to be funny. It wasn't even like there was writing a joke. They would just like create a situation and then expect people to laugh at it. That was it.
Or the couple whose picnic kept getting interrupted.
Oh, right. Yes, that's another good example. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
agree. These are all tropes, and they're lame tropes, and they're not funny.
right, they're not funny on other shows, and they were
No,
really not
no.
funny on this one.
Yes. Um, yeah, the costumes were terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing Adam West didn't know. Someone forgot how to put that together. The cow was
Right.
supposed to be under the cape, but both episodes, not the case. Our retired man actually is a great example of these lame jokes. It's like, so someone who's old who forgets things or who falls asleep while they're talking.
Right.
Hilarious.
I know, yeah. So yeah, so it just wound up being not just infuriating and unfunny, but also offensive.
Yes.
Uh,
Although, I mean, the high-speed jet ski chase was, I felt like I was watching like a lame amusement park action show from the same
yes,
era.
exactly. Yeah, so for listeners, Batman and Robin encounter Mordru the magician, who is the evil sorcerer, who needs to kind of lead them astray so they don't get to the headquarters of the evildoers. And he just randomly jumps on a jet ski and takes off. And then Batman and Robin have to chase him on jet
Right.
skis.
And it goes on and on and on too.
Yes, because they needed to stretch.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, the good news for America is that I found the ratings. This was tied for 58th out of 59 shows that week in the United
Yeah,
States. And the second one was 62nd out of 63. So this didn't exactly resonate. Although it probably got
no,
numbers that right now would be enviable by modern standards
right, yeah,
because it was on a network. But yeah. Oof.
yeah. And again, it was offensive, right?
Oh yeah.
So
Well,
we haven't talked about
speaking
Ghetto Man yet.
speaking of
So
offensive,
yes,
yeah. At one point, Ed McMahon introduces some guy from the minority areas. And at first I
oh,
thought he said Gecko Man. I'm like, what? Oh, then I realized, oh no, no, he's Ghetto Man. So it's a black superhero who made a bunch of questionable jokes about
the ghetto.
I don't even the ghetto. And I didn't write any of the jokes down. I just remember like cringing through the entire thing. But
Yeah,
remembering that, yeah, that's kind of how we were told black people were in the 70s. They were all urban, and they were all like, spoken slang. It kind of reminded me of that episode of The Incredible Hulk that I talked about,
yeah,
where he was in a black neighborhood as a car wash person, and everyone was basically slinging drugs and in a gang. Anyway, but
right.
but this was a whole different level. Um,
Yeah. So offensive to minorities, the elderly, women, and
yes, yes.
comic fans ultimately too.
Yes, yes, yeah, I concur. So yeah, this is our public service announcement to any listener who might have been tempted.
Right.
Do not purchase this DVD. It's not even funny bad. It's just bad.
Just bad. 2 hours
Uh,
of bad.
there are clips online. I will put some links up on Reddit and our Facebook page just so you can experience it, but that's more than sufficient. And you can extrapolate out for yourself how ridiculous the whole thing was.
Yeah.
But oh, the laugh track was just painful on that too.
Yeah.
So before we talk about the the massive Star Wars things,
Hmm.
let's talk a little bit about it's kind of a side trip. I'm not sure it's entirely variety TV exactly, but it is a number of attempts by uh, genre persons, specifically William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, to like record albums and do songs. Of course, the most prominent example is, and I referenced it sort of at the beginning of the show, was William Shatner's performance of Rocket Man on the 1978 Science Fiction Film Awards program. Oh boy, man,
So I
what's
think
going on there?
every human being on the planet should see that
Oh yeah, it's definitely worth your time.
because you will never see anything more gobsmacking in your life.
No, so
It's
Shatner.
just
It
and
is
it's fun.
stunning.
It is bad fun,
No, it's
frankly.
funny, and I would also add, if once you watch that, you go find Chris Elliott doing his version of it on David Letterman
Yeah.
back in the 90s, I think, or 80s. But it is so. Let's talk about Shatner in general for a minute here, because this was in the context of again of this 1978 Science Fiction Film Award show that was broadcast on television,
Yeah.
which I did not see at the time. I assume you didn't either,
I
correct?
no, I did see this.
Oh, you did
I did
see
see
this
this.
now.
I
Okay,
did see
so this
this.
is one
Yeah.
of the ones you saw.
One of the rare
So
ones
you
I
sent me
saw.
there is a link, and there you can watch the entire thing, including commercials, because somebody had a Betamax that they had recorded and they've uploaded to
Right.
YouTube.
Thank
And
goodness.
oh, absolutely. I scrubbed through and watched most of it. So let's just talk about one Shatner's entire demeanor in the whole. He was co-hosting it with oh, what was her
Karen
name?
Black.
Karen Black. Um, and what was your impression of Bill Shatner's demeanor in this
Well,
episode?
so this is peak Shatner. So like whenever we
Yes,
think of Shatner, the bad actor and
yes,
uh sometimes creepy guy,
yes,
this is peak Shatner. So
yes,
he seems really wound up. He's eager to, kind of dominate whenever he's on. He's really creeping on Karen Black a
yes.
lot, grabbing her hand, speaking to her in sort of a weird, sort of leering at her. It just was,
No, it was cringy,
yeah, very cringy.
creepy.
And when you get to the Rocket Man part,
Yes.
which is the acme of the whole show,
Oh yeah, it's
it
yeah.
is the peak. He's just going over off the deep end in three different ways at once.
Yes.
So I'm almost tempted not to give away why I said three different ways at once for somebody who hasn't seen this before, but you see him overact in three different ways in the course
Yes.
of this clip, and it's hilarious. It's hilarious.
Yeah, unintentionally so.
Yeah.
So yeah,
How would you describe him?
I had seen the Rocket Man thing before, but I'd never seen any of the rest of it.
Yeah.
So I was to your point, and I was thinking about this earlier, when we think about all of the jokes, all of the exaggerated impressions of Bill Shatner, it really
Yeah.
is from this period. I
Right.
know you can pick particular episodes of Star Trek, but really, I think he's pretty good in Star Trek, and
Yeah.
he's not crazy over the top most of the time.
Not in the turnabout
Um,
intruder, but
well, that I was thinking about that. That's his own
okay.
problem. Yes, um, but this is I don't know even know what he's going for. Of course, I've decided over time, and as much as Captain Kirk is one of my key childhood heroes in that sense. And I enjoy Shatner's performance as Captain Kirk. Shatner himself leaves a little bit to be desired, shall we say, even up until the present day. I don't find his persona all that intriguing, if not a little obnoxious. But this
Yeah.
is like, yeah, because this at the beginning they're introducing themselves and some during interchange about what to call themselves. He goes, "You can call me Bill." And something about, and I'd like to call you dear or something. I'm like, this is
Yes.
very like, and then I cannot remember what he said at the end, but the implication was they were leaving and maybe they should all go off together and, do something. It was very, very, very transgressive and very sort of gross. And yeah, he was kind of sweaty. You're right, intense is a good word for it. He was just really, he wasn't relaxed. It was a very strange but the Rocket Man thing, which again you have to see, and I will put it up for people
If
to
you've
see.
watched nothing else that we
Yeah,
talk about,
you
Rocket Man.
gotta watch this. Um, but he does it in this spoken word. He doesn't sing. He just speaks it.
Right.
Um, and and he's clearly taking it seriously. I mean, he's taking it very seriously. And if you know anything
Right.
about what he does later, I mean, he records some albums at the time, and he's recorded albums up until relatively recently where he does this sort of very strange spoken word stuff. So he clearly thinks this is his art, which is fine. I'm not gonna. I've heard some of it. Some of it's better than others. The Rocket Man thing is his own. The visuals in particular just make it bizarre. But he clearly, I think it's important to stress, he clearly takes this stuff seriously and still
Oh
does.
yeah, yeah. Well, just to kind of back up a little bit, this was the era when everybody who was
Yes.
a celebrity had some conversation with their agent or producer or whomever about doing an album. And you alluded to
Yes.
this already, but it's really weird. So you had people
Yes, it is.
who could sing, and that was fine. You had people who you didn't expect could sing, like Jim Neighbors, but
Yeah.
did, and it was kind of like out of type for them to do it, but it worked. But you had a lot of people who just had no singing ability. Uh, Jack Webb, who did like one of these
Yes. Yes.
songs. He did a version of "Try a Little Tenderness," I think was what he did. Or Shatner or Leonard Nimoy. We'll talk about those. But anyway, it was
Yes.
weird. And so the one that Shatner did was there's an album, you can look it up on Spotify or Apple Music, called The Transformed Man, which includes Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds
Yes.
and
That
Mr.
one's
Tambourine Man, which are
those
all
two are
also must
yes.
listens.
Absolutely.
How would you describe those two songs?
The Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is it's just over the top. It is
Picture
he's
yourself on a boat on the river.
yeah. But again, I think the first time I heard it, which was, I don't know, I heard all this stuff as an adult. I did not encounter it as a kid. Um, but it's been a while since I first heard it. At first I thought, the first reaction is, this is, was just a cash grab, right? That he just
Yeah.
did this to make money. Or then the second thought is, well, maybe he's being funny on purpose. And then the
Hmm.
third real reaction is he really takes this seriously. He thinks
Yeah.
he's doing a particular version of art. And again, I mean, like he makes an album later with like Ben Folds. I mean, he's like he
Oh
takes this stuff
yeah.
seriously.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
don't know how seriously now because what was the name of his? He had an album recently. William Shatner has been, right. That's a play on being a
yeah,
has-been actor, obviously.
right,
But
right, right.
anyway, but like yeah. So the Rocket Band really does show that he was serious in making these artistic efforts or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, I think he takes even the most recent one serious. I really truly do. I think he thinks there's a particular form of spoken word, poetry, and he is just engaging in it anyway. It's
Yeah,
anyway.
I so
And I've
just as an aside, I use so like the Mr. Tambourine Man ends
mhm.
with him screaming Mr. Tambourine
Oh,
Man.
yes, it
And
does.
at one time, and I don't know what happened to it, but I used to have that on my phone that I could associate that with certain events on my phone, like getting a text. And let's just say people who heard that regularly, like every time I got a text, wanted me to stop that immediately.
I
It's
bet
just
they did.
so obnoxious. Mr. Tabaret Man.
I haven't listened. I did listen. I've listened to Has Been. I don't know. I listened to some of it for some reason at some point. I think actually that particular track, he actually is trying to say something.
Oh,
I
really?
I, I
Okay,
want to
because
give him a
I
little
haven't
bit.
listened to this stuff.
I
Yeah.
don't. I have subject myself to all kinds of things, clearly, as this episode indicates.
Yeah.
I It's been a while, so I don't want to make a comment. I didn't obviously have time to get to this and didn't think about it really until just a little while ago. But I think I think he really truly is trying to perform a certain kind of
Yes.
spoken word art. Now, whether it's any good or not is its own discussion. But yes, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and Mr. Tambourine Man. Oh God, it's just absolutely awful. But funny,
Yeah.
in its own, but not on purpose.
Yeah.
So I agree. I do agree with that.
There's a very funny there's a very funny video on YouTube of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and actually Mr. Tambourine Man too, but both of them like somebody did, like screenshots from Star Trek, the original series. In one case, him grimacing and, anyway, the
Yeah,
Shatner
I think I've seen that.
overacting, right?
Yes,
That
yes,
that
yes,
that's
yes.
that's the version to see, definitely, if you want to
I think
experience
that's
Lucy in the
totally
Sky
fair.
with Diamonds.
Um, yeah. Um,
Want to talk
you
about
got
other
us.
celebrities
Yeah, let's do that. What are those celebrities you want to talk about?
well, Leonard Nimoy.
Sure.
So Leonard Nimoy also got caught up in the craze of making albums and actually made a couple.
Yeah, you did.
Leonard Nimoy presents Mr. Spock's Music from Outer Space
Yes.
and the two sides of Leonard Nimoy. And
Yes.
the two sides of Leonard Nimoy is the one to listen to because it has highly illogical,
Yes.
which is sort of this jokey thing. It doesn't age well.
No,
You
no,
know,
no, no.
a man marries a woman, and then blah blah blah. And anyway,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
yeah. But the really the thing that everybody has to listen to is the Ballad of Bilbo Baggins.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, which
And there
is
are,
about
no, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say it's as good as you expect it to be. Because
He
Leonard Nimoy is
doesn't,
no singer, a talented actor, but not a great singer, and the song is odd.
it's an odd song. It does do a decent job of summarizing the plot of The Hobbit.
Yeah,
The video is quite bizarre. I think he was on TV again, maybe a variety show.
right.
I didn't look that up, but it because one of the versions I found included some kind of introduction to the video.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I need to go back and find, but the dancing is the music's. It's a very 60s vibe. The dancing's a very 60s vibe. It's just and to give Nimoy credit, it looks like he's trying his best, but it's yeah, it's
Yeah.
bizarre.
Yeah, I
I mean,
don't think
that
he
had to have
took
been
it
a.
as seriously as Shatner did. It was
Oh, no,
just,
no, 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 not
yeah,
like
it
that.
was a
I think
lark for
he,
him.
yeah, yeah, but he seemed to be having fun singing the song. But no, I don't think he thought of himself as contributing something to the great massive art in the world by Bilbo Bagginsing it around the rocks there. Yeah, that was.
Yeah,
Oof. Um, and that a lot of that did feel kind of like money grabs,
right.
to a
It was
degree.
merch.
It was merch. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so shall we move on to the panoply of Star Wars related, or am I forgetting something that we were supposed to
No,
talk about?
that's fine. The surprising number of Star Wars
Yes. So
variety show tie-ins.
the the number of the main ones I already mentioned, right, are Donnie and Marie in no particular order. Donnie and Marie, the Star Wars Holiday Special, and the
Hmm.
Muppets. That may be in fact the chronological order as well. And then we can throw in a couple others. But so I'll start with Donnie. Let's start with Donnie and Marie. Um, and this is again one of the things that I have subjected upon you. Because
Okay.
I did see this as a child. Because again, this is a great example of how um, love for a particular property would make you very excited to see any reference to it whatsoever on television.
Right. Right.
And we did watch Donnie and Marie, um, and it was, I don't know how I knew, but I knew enough. I knew in advance that it was going to be on because I used to. I think I may have mentioned this in a previous episode. I had a one of those boxy cassette recorders,
Hmm.
with the buttons in the front and the
Yeah.
mono speaker, and I would occasionally record the television. And I recorded this. I listened to it over and over again. So I was again warping my brain at a young age with Darth Vader's Raiders and Chewbacca
Hmm.
Waka Waka. Um, uh, but all that mattered to me was it was Star Wars, right?
Yes.
And there was Darth Vader, and there was Chewbacca, and there was C3PO, and that's what was important to me. And the rest of it was just, it didn't matter so much, I guess. But I mean, it's a classic variety show of the time, display with the shiny disco-esque
Hmm.
background, and they're in character, but they're singing songs. There's a variety of short songs. Um, as we already made some reference to, with
Yeah.
Donnie and Marie playing basically Luke and Leia, and then
Hmm.
Chris Christopherson as Han Solo, and Red Fox as Obi-Wan Kenobi, or Oki Benoki Frenoki, depending on, Paul Lynde as the Grand Moff Tarkin, and so forth and so on. So, as a 50-something or 60-something-year-old man being forced to watch this now, what was your reaction to this?
You bastard. You made me watch this.
That's fair.
It was, so seriously now, it again was sort of like the distillation of everything about variety shows at the time.
Yes.
Cheaply made,
Yes.
just random stuff thrown in. Of course, you had to have women dressed as stormtroopers, in sort
Yes.
of a variant costume, sort of Rockette-like dancers. I'm sure were regulars on the show.
They were, yeah.
Uh, just painful, just painful.
Yes.
And again, not funny. The
No.
efforts at humor were bad. The music was bad. Everything was bad, but it was wholesome. It was Donnie and Marie,
Oh, it was.
classic wholesomeness on the screen.
Yes, it was.
And the like also like the minimum that they had to do in order to be able to call it Star Wars. So
Yes.
having C3PO, R2D2, Chewbacca there, the original
Darth Vader.
costumes, Darth Vader, that let them, put the Star Wars label on it, even though they were
Ah,
flying away in a rocket ship with
yes,
stock
yes, yes.
footage of a Saturn V rocket taking off.
That's right. That's right. The and then even this I noticed as a young geek, and it grates on my as an old geek or an ancient geek. They kept calling it my force
Right,
instead
my
of the
force.
force. I'm like,
Right.
no.
Which make it sound like a euphemism for something.
Ah, yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
granddad, I don't want to hear about your force.
No.
But also it was, well, not James Earl Jones. It
Right.
was Thurl Ravenscroft,
Yes.
the voice of Tony the Tiger, but also, if you've been to the Haunted Mansion, he
Yes.
does a famous voiceover there.
Yes.
Um, anyway, he was good.
He was
I
good.
always
Yeah.
liked him. He was a good voice
Yeah.
actor.
So one thing that, and this is a theme that now runs through all of these things, and you made some reference to it, but I want to make an overt point about it. It is in many ways shocking to realize how much of the actual costumes and props, especially costumes,
Yeah,
that they allowed to be used in all of these different iterations to promote this movie, right?
right.
C3PO and R2D2 show up on all of these things, but it's Darth Vader's costume, the Chewbacca costume, and some other things we're going to
Hmm.
talk about, all the Cantina monsters. It's just amazing, really.
All
They
right.
were all over the place.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Are we going to go through the episode, the different parts of the
the Donnie Marie
special?
thing,
Yeah.
please, if you like.
No, I mean, I think we kind of broke it down pretty well. I think it was, again, just an excuse for casting people,
Oh, yeah.
whom the producers thought would be what the audience would like to see, with this very threadbare story. So,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
it
yes.
doesn't deserve to go through it in greater
No,
detail.
that's totally fair. So we can
Yeah.
move on. Well, I'll hold off on the granddaddy of them all for a moment. Let's talk about
Okay.
the Muppets for a second.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is the oldest of all of these. This one that premiered in 1980, I believe. While they're clearly filming The Empire Strikes Back because Luke is in
Right.
the famous costume from that movie. Which,
And it becomes a running joke.
yes,
Yeah, but like,
yes,
I love your outfit.
yeah. Can I? Who's your tailor? Who's your?
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
remembered. So I remember seeing this at the time, and I don't know if I've seen it since, but I remember seeing it at the time, and yeah, two things stuck in my head: the
Hmm.
joke about I Love You Taylor or Who's Your Taylor and the gargling Gershwin bit
Yes.
stuck in my head.
Yeah.
So
The Scottish
yeah,
McGonagall.
yeah, yes,
Anyway, that was actually funny. I laughed at
yeah.
that.
So yeah, because he was supposed to be the main guest, some Scottish Muppet who gargled Gershwin, as
Yes.
in George Gershwin, um, and and then Luke Skywalker breaks through the door or the wall with C-3PO and R2-D2, and he's so the funny one of the conceits of the episode is it's Luke Skywalker on this episode.
Right.
Mark Hamill's there too, who's Luke's quote unquote cousin.
Hmm.
Um, but it is this sort of has this little weird story they're trying to find Chewbacca, which really results in a pigs in space routine, which was that works.
Right.
But again, you've got C-3PO, R2-D2, Chewbacca, and of course Mark Hamill in full Skywalker regalia to promote this movie. It's I don't do we things like that happen anymore? I don't think that they do. Maybe they
No,
do, but
no. Anyway, but it was actually fun.
yeah.
This was probably my favorite among what we saw.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, the Muppet Show was, I think, genuinely entertaining,
Yeah.
and it was, I didn't necessarily need Scooter's rendition of the Godard song or whatever it was, the six string orchestra. But anyway, beyond
Yeah.
that, yeah, it's entertaining. It's
But
quality
but it
stuff.
also unserious, and it strikes me
Oh
suddenly
yeah,
that you can be unserious
yes.
and be charming, but
Hmm.
it's the snark and the condescension in the other shows that really was the big turnoff for me.
Well, yeah, and I think that to your point, I think that even though it was silly, as one would expect at the Muppet Show,
Right.
um, it it wasn't it took it seriously in the sense that people liked this stuff and they clearly liked Star Wars.
Yeah.
And Mark Hamill's having clearly a very good time doing this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, he was even doing impressions of the Muppets,
Yes,
which kind of like a little hint of his voice acting career to
that's right.
come.
That's right. That was pretty good. Um, so I'll leave the minor ones, but let's talk about the granddaddy of them all, the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Okay.
Which, again, I watched when it aired at the time. I still remember it's like one of those things that, like, where were you when Kennedy was shot? I don't know. I wasn't alive yet, but I can tell you where I was when the Star Wars Holiday Special came on.
Okay.
Um, it's in my parents'
Equally
bedroom.
important moments in
Sure.
American
Uh,
history.
uh, tragedies all, but I was in my parents' bedroom in Temple, Texas, watching it on a Sony Trinitron with rabbit ears. Very
Hmm.
exciting. Um, and it is, but when did you first see it?
I probably didn't see it until maybe like whenever that the sort of bootleg copy came out,
Hmm.
was that like
Okay,
20 years ago, maybe?
probably.
Yeah, I think that's the first time I saw it. I heard about it, and at the time, for whatever reason, it's like, oh, okay, there's a variety show on with Star Wars. I don't know why I didn't see it, but it was like it didn't feel like a big loss at the
Oh,
time.
it wasn't, no. Save for, just the bizarreness of it all.
Right, but then, the bootleg copy comes out and there's all this buzz about it, being what George Lucas wanted to suppress. Of
Right,
course, I
right.
had to watch it then.
Well, sure, sure, sure. Did you watch it was it a physical media bootleg copy or
No, it was definitely a digital copy. Anyway, I
it's
don't remember the
it's
timeline for this.
it's been on YouTube for quite a while, and I know I
Yeah,
watched it again on YouTube at that probably roughly the same time.
yeah,
Partially just to confirm that I did see this thing that I
right. It did
remembered
happen.
seeing. It actually did happen, yeah. So in general structure, right, it is the story of Life Day on Kashyyyk, which I'm probably not saying right, Chewbacca's home planet.
Well, we just lost all our
Um,
listeners now.
I know all the Star Wars people are like, "How do you didn't pronounce it right, man?" Um, and it includes all of the major characters from the Star Wars movie.
Hmm.
According to Bruce Valanche, who was one of the writers on this thing, that Lucas had couple of ideas for stories. Um, one of which was The Empire Strikes Back, the prequels, but it was his idea for this to be about Life Day, this
Right.
holiday on on Chewie's homeworld.
Yeah. So
So
it's a holiday special
yes,
here on Earth, but it's not Christmas in the story. It's Life Day, just to make it
yes,
clear for
and it
people
came
listening.
out on the Friday before Thanksgiving, in 1978, 77, whichever one it
Hmm.
was. Um, excuse me, yeah, 78. Um, and and I think actually Lucas at the time thought it would be something that would be shown every year. Oops. Um,
Like the Grinch.
that's right. Um, so, and it shows, but it focuses on the Wookiee household, uh, Chewie's wife Mala, his father-in-law or father, actually, I'm not sure which, Itchy, and their son Lumpy.
Right.
Um,
And
all of
they
which
live in a basically a suburban American home.
in a
It sure it
treehouse.
looks like it. Yeah. Just like
But
if you took the Brady Bunch house and you put it into a tree house,
yeah, it had a
you'd have this.
green shag carpet.
Yeah.
It's great.
Had a 70s kitchen and
Yes, and all of the
a few touches that looked not so much human, but very
but pretty
small.
very
Yeah.
close, yeah. And all of the dialogue is in Wookiee grunts, so there's no subtitles, so you don't know what
Mhm.
they're saying. It's great.
Right.
And then it's built around Han trying to get back for Life Day for Chewie, but having to dodge the Empire. And there's like there's a narrative about this within the show, but then built around that are a bunch of 70s variety show skits that involve Harvey Korman a lot for some reason,
Yeah. From the Carol Burnett show
playing,
for people who don't know.
yes, from the Carol Burnett show, playing
Yeah.
three different characters. Art Carney is a character in this. He's in the more of the live action interaction parts.
Yeah. Yeah. From the
Uh,
Honeymooners.
from the Honeymooners, I did not realize who had won an Academy Award 2 years previous to this. It's mind blowing. Um,
Yeah.
and then B. Arthur shows up. Uh,
From
we
Maud,
have from Maud
but
and the
also from
Golden
Broadway.
Girls and Broadway. At this point, the Golden Girls didn't exist, but so the episode is just it's rife with these sort of interstitial things that, like, again, Harvey Korman plays an alien Julia Child. Harvey Korman is a an instruction video for some electronics kit the kid is putting together. That was maybe the worst skit. No, that's hard to say. Hard to say what the worst skit is, but the joke in that one was that he was a robot that had glitches, and they did a bunch of video stuff where he was like glitching, but it wasn't funny. Um, and in fairness, Harvey Korman could be funny. He was very funny on the Carol Burnett show.
Oh, I loved
Not
him on
funny
the
at all
Carol
on
Burnett
this.
show. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And Blazing Saddles.
that's
That's
right.
classic Harvey Korman.
Uh, the highlight and the thing that everybody knows about this is like there's a cartoon in it that introduces Boba Fett for the first time, which I think was a feature on one of the DVDs. It's the only thing that was released, I think, in actual media, official media, by Lucasfilm. Um, and of course, it all culminates in the Life Day ceremony, and Carrie Fisher sings a song, and Wookiees in red robes walk around and with orbs. There's a performance by Jefferson Starship and Diane Carroll. It's all very strange.
Random, right? It's again
Random,
like
yeah.
whom could they book for this?
Yes, yes, yes. I read they wanted Cher, but she didn't want to do it. And someone tried to get Robin Williams. That didn't work out. But anyway,
Good for them.
it's very it's
Good for
drawn
them.
out. Yes, it's boring. It's again,
Yeah.
when is this ever going to be over with? Although I will say, compared to Legends of Superheroes, this seems like high art.
Yeah. Well, okay, so this I think we deserve to go through some of the individual
Oh yeah,
bits
please, please,
more.
please. Yes,
So the the part with Diane Carroll is just one of the most random things, right?
yes,
So Itchy uh, gets this sort of virtual reality headset from Art Carney
right.
and puts it on, and Art Carney says something, with a knowing wink, "Oh, you'll enjoy this," and
Yes,
it's Diane Carroll who first gives this very sultry introduction.
yes,
It's really sort of softcore.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just so incredibly suggestive and cringy, and then she sings a song. Um, it's really uncomfortable and
Yes.
really also just like this is for a kid show.
Right. Right.
What
Right.
was the idea here exactly? Just very, very odd.
No,
And
it's
then
incredibly strange.
he's he's liking it,
Oh
but and
yeah.
then but it has no connection to anything, right? So it's just you have this VR softcore music video, and then that's it. It's gone.
Right. It was the part of it is a good illustration of how this fits in the variety genre, in that it's just
Yeah,
like we've got to have some acts of some kind to, I guess that's supposed to appeal to the dads in the audience. I don't know.
yeah. I don't know.
But
Like something for everyone,
that's right.
including horny dads.
But yeah, the way
Check.
I let's go to the big board. We got the horny dads. Okay, cool. Um, yeah, the way Art Carney's character introduces it, it really is kind of like oh va 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 boom kind of thing. It's very strange.
Yeah, and Art Carney's very weird in this, that
Yes, he
he's
is.
like, so he played this very broad character in The Honeymooners,
Hmm.
the wacky neighbor. But
Right.
here it's like every once in a while he like does like 2% of that,
Hmm.
he'll like have an encounter with one of the Imperial officers, at this house, and he'll start to do oh boom boom sort of thing, and then it immediately stops, right? He doesn't even get into the boom boom boom. It's like, okay, I'll just back up here. It's
Yeah, yeah.
again not funny. I like why did you cast this guy? He-
Well, the funny, I mean, yeah, it's not funny. The entire live, I keep saying live action, the whole thing's live action except for the cartoon, the narrative portion, right? The
yeah,
narrative portion is not funny.
no,
It is very serious. In watching it, the way in which the stormtroopers and the Imperial people behave reminds me of watching a movie about like Nazis or something,
right,
you know,
yeah,
in the 50s. This totalitarian state is stomped because they tear the kids' room up and they're
hmm
mean and they're constantly sending out these alerts. And it's very sort of menacing. It's not funny. In some ways,
no,
it's like part of me is like, why didn't they just make an hour-long show about that, which may still have sucked, but
right,
it would have at
and
least had
again,
a narrative purpose.
yeah, and again, that's a little why like Art Carney kind of like giving a little hint of the wacky
Yes,
persona he had in on the Honeymooners just seemed completely out of place.
right. Or they would go. Okay, so yeah, so there's that one. There's I already mentioned the Julia Child thing, but there is this like I guess the conceit is that Mala is making dinner, so she watches some show to help her prepare
Right,
Bantha. Bantha Surprise, I think is what it's called. I was struck by the fact that clearly the authors of this special only knew of two planets, the planet they
right,
were on and Tatooine. Everything was like that was it, man. That was the entirety of the Star Wars universe. Because the kid had a Bantha stuffed toy. She's cooking Bantha.
yeah.
The B. Arthur bit is on Tatooine. It's very, very strange.
hmm
So what other element do you want to talk about?
Well, again, we have the random Jefferson Starship moment,
Yes.
which I think they got booked because they had Starship in the name.
Oh, it makes logical sense.
Absolutely, the
How could
kids are
you
going to
think
love it.
otherwise?
Starship, it just fits. And it was again just sort of like randomly this Imperial officer is watching
Yes.
a video on some device that Art Carney puts in front of him,
Yes.
and he kind of like taps his finger along with it a little bit to the beat, but he's not actually keeping tempo with the music.
No.
Again, here it comes into the show. It has no connection to anything that's happened before, and nothing that happens afterwards has any connection to it either.
No. No.
So why have that serious story if
Yes.
you're just going to keep dropping these lead weights into the middle of it? I don't know.
I didn't mention, it seems worth for trivia's sake that the very, very first time we see a video segment, which is kind of done like it's a 3D thing or a hologram, is there's actually Cirque du Soleil that did that before
Okay.
they were famous. So again, it's always basically the overall structure of the episode or the special is we have this narrative story, and during the episode the characters basically watch TV. That's what it boils down to. They watch
Right.
Grandpa watches Cirque du Soleil, watches the semi-porny um, Diane Carroll song. Can't, yeah. Um, the the Stormtrooper watches Starship Troopers, the Jefferson Starship, not Starship Troopers. That might have been more entertaining. The Mom watches a cooking show. It's all like a weird. That's the structure, and that's
Yeah.
all the excuse for all of the segments, including again the cartoon, which Itchy watches at the cartoon. Of course, it made no sense why Itchy's father and the rebels would be in a cartoon as an entertainment segment.
Right.
That made no sense.
Well, and
But
wasn't the B. Arthur bit also something that they were watching?
yeah, I don't remember. I was trying to remember why, but yes, it was toward the end, and somehow they were. It was also something on the whatever they called it was in television. But yeah, they were watching it. I don't know why they were watching it, because why you would be watching some random bar on Tatooine, I don't know.
Right.
That then results in again the Nazi-esque sort of it's curfew, everyone has to go home, but then no one wants to leave. So B. Arthur sings a song, I guess to make them all want to leave. I don't know, but
Yeah. So like
it's
yeah, so it's the Star Wars bar,
yeah,
with B. Arthur, and the Imperials want to close it down. And that and you could really kind of, see, okay, this is a person who had a big career on
yeah,
Broadway,
yeah, yeah.
talented person and so forth, but what the hell is it doing here?
I don't know.
And including again Harvey Korman being unfunny as some
Oh,
sort of alien with a hole in the top of his head, who wants to be her suitor.
that's right. Because she said, "Come back, see you soon," and he thought that was the whole joke was he misunderstood her
Yeah,
just being a barmaid, basically. Yeah, and the fact that he poured drinks in his head instead of drinking them, hilarious.
I know.
It's chronically unfunny. It is. Again, the tonality. I really didn't think about it till this time I watched it. The tonality is just really weird. Again, this sort of we have the family drama. Is Chewie going to come home with the sort of Nazi totalitarian occupation of the planet, and a bunch of weird and wacky TV segments that don't make any
Right.
sense.
Oh, and a death. Don't
Oh, that's
forget
right.
the
That's
stormtrooper who
that's
falls
right.
to his death
That's right.
off the balcony.
Yes, that's right. We can't. Well, we've all become jaded to stormtrooper deaths in the Star Wars universe, so I had forgotten
I
about it.
guess, yeah.
But yeah, that's right too.
And the final scene is incredibly boring.
Terribly
The
so.
Life
Yes.
Day ceremony they've been talking about, oh, the
Yes.
special event and so forth. It's just Dullsville.
Yes. And Carrie Fisher getting to sing, which apparently she really wanted to do. To my
Okay.
point earlier about some of these people just want to sing for some weird reason.
I guess you
Who can
felt
explain
like
these things?
maybe it was that they felt that was if their career in acting didn't work out, that they would have
Yeah.
something else to do, or people wouldn't take you seriously unless you had some singing talent. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a feeling, and I can't really articulate it incredibly well, but that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. There seems to be this notion that any kind of performer should have all these different skills, not just
Yes.
acting, but other skills too, which I
Right.
think connects back to this whole vaudevillian way of looking at things, where you could do the soft shoe, tell a joke, and
Right.
then maybe, sing a song or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Which
It
Mark
just doesn't,
Hamill actually plays on in the Muppet
he
Show
does.
episode.
He
Yeah.
does. So, okay, so anything else about the Star Wars holiday special you want to talk about?
Ah, man, I think we've beaten that special to
That
death, so we're
that
good.
that that Tauntaun has been beaten to death, man. All right.
He's been gutted and
So I listed three others, and we already mentioned, but we talked about the 1978 Science Fiction Film Awards. I only mention it here because Darth Vader is a presenter in that episode
right.
with a not with James Earl Jones as the voice, but just some fake Darth Vader. But again, it was like another example in this time period because all of these things are happening in 77 and 78 for the most part, where
Right.
they're just clearly willing to um, send the costumes to wherever you can send them to hopefully get some more publicity. Because you know what Star Wars was missing back in the 1977 period? Publicity. Um,
Publicity. Yes, exactly.
Nobody knew about it until they tuned into the 1978 Star Wars Science Fiction Film Awards. But anyway, that's just a passing reference. So then you didn't watch the Bob Hope one, right?
No, no,
So
it
that's
would have broken me.
it was it was really ridiculous. It was yeah,
I mean, I've never
it's
liked Bob
Olivia
Hope, so
it's
I
Olivia Newton-John. That's totally fair. I mean, Olivia Newton-John, Perry Como,
man,
and Bob Hope in this skit, which Mark Hamill ends up into the very end of.
okay,
So again, there's more the promotion stuff, but it was just the idea that what did he call himself? Darth Nate? No, Darth Nader? I don't remember.
no, that was
Uh,
on that was the Muppet Show.
yeah, that's right.
Durf Nader or something like
Darth
that. Yeah,
Nader.
yeah.
Bob. Oh no, he was Bob Vader. Excuse me, Bob
Bob
Vader.
Vader.
I got
Okay,
my jokes wrong. It's hilarious,
okay,
Bob Vader. Bob Vader kidnapped Santa Claus, and then Olivia Newton-John and Perry Como are like, but it was like wasn't even like they were having. It wasn't even a full narrative because at one point one of the side characters even identifies, "Oh, Perry Como, I love your records." I'm like, what is going on here? Anyway, it's just very strange, very lame, very bad, but nonetheless more promotion for Star Wars. And then of course the Richard Pryor Star Wars bar skit, which is just the
yeah,
monsters or the
hmm
aliens, but not no other. I kept expecting R2D2 to show up,
yeah.
but he didn't. But anyway,
Well, he was in
it's
every other
that's exactly right.
opportunity
I said, why not?
to show off the hardware.
So anyway, any thoughts about any of the cross promotion stuff, or just we've
No,
had
just
enough of it?
but again, there were times when it could work, right? So uh, the Richard Pryor clip, which is on YouTube, is watchable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is watchable. You're right.
and if
It
you
is
like Richard
watchable.
Pryor, you'd like this.
I think that's fair. And the
Yeah,
Muppet thing worked,
yeah,
but the rest of it, holy cow. Um, although I will say, I by no means want to go down as the defender of the Star Wars Holiday Special. It was at least compared to some of this other stuff, really was. At least they tried, I guess. But it's
yeah.
still,
In some ways, well, the animated part of the Star Wars holiday special was interesting. I mean,
yeah,
not only was it not it was it just to kind of roll back to that. Not only was it the introduction of Boba Fett, but it was also like this interesting animation style. It was
yeah, it was, yeah.
like Ralph Bakshi was an
Hmm.
animator at the time. It was very reminiscent of him. Um, in some ways, there was I never quite figured out why it was like a red Jello planet. There was something
Yeah,
going on
I
there.
couldn't figure that out either. It was at one point I thought it was supposed to be water, but it clearly wasn't. It was very strange.
Yeah, but it had also like the sort of like heavy metal magazine
No,
vibe
that's
to it.
exactly correct. I thought the same
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. So that was it was worth watching for that, I thought.
So one final question. What was the worst of the worst for you?
Donnie and Marie, without a doubt.
Okay.
I I hated that so much. And Legends of the Superheroes is a close second.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd be convinced that that was the worst because it was so amazingly long. How about you? What was your
Yeah. I think I was just gonna go very specific and go Ghetto Man.
Ghetto Man? Yes,
But
that
but
moment.
yeah, I do think Legends of the Superheroes in general was just the worst because it was uninteresting. Donnie Marie, I can at least say, here's an example of kitschy 70s entertainment. I'm not even
Yeah,
sure I would say that's true about any of those the two episodes, and it was just so painful. But yeah, Donnie Marie's not great either. It's all oh the Bob Hope was worse actually. So I'm gonna go.
you're gonna go with Bob Hope.
I'll go Ghetto Man and Bob Hope as my worst of the worst.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
it's
reconsidering. Maybe it was Legends of the Superheroes. It's just like what a lost opportunity again.
yeah,
Like,
it was just painful. Alrighty, well I think that wraps up this week's episode of Ancient Geeks. We
oh, we
hope you
didn't do
enjoyed the
merch.
show.
We didn't
Oh,
do
merch!
merch.
I'm always
Wait,
forgetting
wait.
merch. I'm always forgetting merch.
All right.
It's
What merch did you
well,
have?
but I mean, this the hilarious part of this is almost like a joke because I didn't have any merch and didn't want any merch.
God, who would? Usually like Donnie and Marie dolls, in Star Wars costumes or
Yeah,
uh
yeah. I mean, I guess maybe, if you ever could have gotten a bootleg copy of the Star Wars Holiday Special, because I know that it was circulating at one point,
yeah.
that could be merch you could have had. I do. Although now you give me other flashbacks from the 70s. You used to could buy one of Donnie's shticks that he wore purple socks. And you could,
Okay.
I remember them advertising, you could buy these Donny Osmond purple socks.
I do not remember that.
And there were Donnie and Marie dolls. I do remember that too.
Okay.
I owned none of this. But yeah, there's none of this merch. Holy cow.
Yeah. Boy,
Although
so here's a thought. Maybe there could have been like the Donnie and Marie Star Wars special action figure line with like the set as,
that's
kind of the carrying case that would fold out and
that's
eh,
right. That's right. You can see that. Sure.
okay.
I just had a thought though. I don't know. I kind of wouldn't mind a small miniature of Mordru on a jet ski.
There. Okay. That would have been good. Yeah. I put down as the merch I wish I had, it would be the neuralizer from Men in Black that would make me
It's a
forget some of
forget.
these atrocities.
Yeah, but how would you not? The usefulness of all this is to learn to appreciate some of the things that we have gotten.
That's true. That's true. And certainly I think that the punchline is that TV is so much better now.
It's yes,
So
absolutely
much
is.
better. And so much
There's
so much kinder to these geek properties that we like talking about.
absolutely. So now I guess I can say thank
Now
you for
you can say it.
listening because I'm now wondering how many times I've messed up the end of this thing when it's been my responsibility more than once. At any
It's your
rate,
trademark, Stephen.
there we go. Stephen always ends through. Yeah, it's great. Um, anyway, thank you all for listening. And we look forward to hearing from you. Any feedback you have about this or other episodes, and we'll see you next week on Ancient Geeks.
And so we turn off the TV cameras for another episode of Ancient Geeks. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. And whether you like us or not, please leave a review on the podcast service of your choice. If you have direct feedback for us, contact us at someancientgeeks@gmail.com. You can also find us on Reddit, Facebook, Blue Sky, and other social media outlets. All content copyright 2025, Tom Grant and Stephen Taylor. Music by Reversed Image, whom you can find on Pixabay. See you next time.